Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Coast of Bays, Central Notre Dame. And I can tell the Honourable Member he doesn't need his timer. I'm going to do it very well.
You're going to time me. I can't believe it, Madam Speaker. I figured you'd just let me go on and on. I've ensured that no harm can be done with that thing. If it rings, you can toss me, Madam Speaker, like you should have done with many members that have been out of line here today, and especially on that side of the House, Madam Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise here on behalf of the great people of Coast of Bays, Central Notre Dame, to speak on this privilege of motion on the failure to produce documents pertaining to funds delivered inappropriately by the SDTC, the Sustainable Development Technology Fund of Canada. Madam Speaker, this is just another reason why Canadians have lost faith in this corrupt NDP Liberal government. It's one of the reasons that 24 of the very people that are even connected to this Liberal slush fund have decided to sign a letter asking the Prime Minister to quit, to do what 40+% of Canadians want him to do, Madam Speaker. It's just become so corrupt. And the business of this House has ground to a halt. The place where we come to represent the people that elected us, to work on issues that are important to them. But no, the work stopped. We have to debate this point of privilege until this corrupt entity across the way decides that they've had enough, and they produce those documents which the chair of this House has demanded that they do. It's quite a simple remedy, Madam Speaker. On June 10th, a motion was adopted calling for the production of documents related to the SDTC to the law clerk. But what happened over the summer? Well, very little. Documents were either redacted on the order of this corrupt Prime Minister, or they simply weren't produced at all. So common sense Conservative House Leader raised the question of privilege because of the failure to comply with the order of this House. On September 26, the Chair ruled that this House privilege had in fact been breached. So, we're here debating, begging for accountability, once again, from this corrupt government that Canadians have had enough of. It's just another attempt to cover up Liberal corruption. You might say, what corruption? What's so corrupt about the Green Slush Fund? Well, Madam Speaker, the Auditor General sampled a 5-year period of transactions for the SDTC and found that 82% of the transactions that were sampled are in conflict. Is anyone shocked? I doubt it. The 24 MPs that just signed a document and presented it in caucus to the Prime Minister, demanding that he step down, demanding that he leave because his corruption, his cronies, taking away their chance of re-election, taking away their chance to sit in this place to represent the people that they love. So, what does 82% of these transactions look like, Madam Speaker? It looks like $330 million. $330 million, Madam Speaker, was found to be granted to Liberal insiders in conflicts of interest And that was found by only investigating 226 of the 405 transactions that were approved by the board over that 5-year period. So it's probably, no doubt, it's just the tip of the iceberg here. So we've had that board that was headed by a close friend of the Prime Minister's, appointed in 2016, Andre Lise-Matteau. Madam Speaker, that chair received $250 million for her very own venture capital firm, Cycle Capital, in the form of grants from the board that she became chair of. You can't make this up. So before she joined the board, radical jumpsuit environmentalists lobbied for her. Before he became the radical Minister of the Environment, lobbied his crooked pals and the Prime Minister and secured $111 million for her. And over her time on that board, a further $114 million went to so-called green companies that she was invested in. Wow. So altogether, so far, it's looking like around $390 million was dished out to Liberal insiders in just this one crooked slush fund. And I'll speak about another slush fund a little further along the way. This one's called the green one. That one I'll refer to as the blue slush fund. So let's get a little context here. The Chrétien sponsorship scandal was all over $42 million in taxpayers' money that went to further the Liberal Party's cause at the time. Very pale in comparison to nearly $400 million that's represented in this green slush fund cover-up scandal. And scandals are nothing new. Look at the We Charity, where this Liberal government blew nearly $1 billion of taxpayers' money, passed it on to their friends. It's nothing new. Nothing new. It's a continuation of a trend. SNC Lavalin, Aga Khan, Arrive scam. It just goes on and on. And if this NDP Liberal government is not removed from this place, it'll continue. It'll continue on and on. So the privilege debate is over this green slush fund. And this privilege debate can come to an end very, very quickly. All the Prime Minister has to do is to follow orders of the chair, produce the documents, unredacted, and this privilege debate comes to an end. It's all over. We can get back to the business of the House, working on trying to fix this country. But you know, it's impossible. It's impossible to get through to the people that sit across the way and to this crooked Prime Minister, Madam Speaker. But it's not just him. It's not just him. There's something I'm going to refer to as the blue slush fund here right now, known to others as small craft harbours, Madam Speaker. And it's going to be a real shocker. Would anyone be surprised that one member of this House, who just so happens to be the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard, that administers the Small Craft Harbours program, this year delivered 20% of the projects in that program to her very own riding. 950 Madam Speaker, did I just hear you say you wanted to give me an extra 20 minutes? I know it's exciting, right? You know, I mean, where does the bacalao come from? Right? It comes in through the small craft harbours, and you know how you like it. I give you some for Christmas every year. That's why you give me all these privileges here. So,
Be, you know, serious in his comments when addressing the chair, please. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, you distracted me when we got onto the small craft harbours. But really, does that add up? 338 members in this House, one of them gets 20% of the small craft harbours budget for her own riding, signs off on it herself. Well, we've got harbours like in Pubnico, East and West Pubnico, where the landed value of the catch is higher than the entire Pacific catch in the commercial fisheries. In two harbours, and they didn't get a nickel, where vessels are quadruple-breasted, wharves are condemned, falling apart. The fish harvesters can't even receive fuel shipments because the wharves aren't safe enough for the fuel trucks to pass out over them. They're hazards to anyone that used those wharves. Could fall down through through broken planks or whatnot. Ladders are missing. It's unbelievable what's happening, and there's a whole bunch of ridings in Atlantic Canada that receive a disproportionate amount of catch being landed compared to the funding that they receive from small craft harbours. While the minister uses small craft harbours as her very own slush fund. So a few other things don't add up, Madam Speaker. I'm not sure if you're aware that the oyster industry in PEI has become in great peril. In mid-July, it was discovered that the MSX parasite had been detected in three areas of PEI. By mid-August, the minister declared that she's going to invest $500,000 a year in the PEI oyster industry and have a summit this fall with industry experts to try to figure out what's going on. No talks of that summit so far, but $500,000 this year, $500,000 next year, committed to try to save an industry. That means about $100 million to that small island economy. $500,000 a year. And it looks like, by the report that just came out a couple of weeks ago from CFIA, they think that the MSX is spread all over PEI. And everywhere that virus has shown up, it's completely decimated oyster populations. If that oyster industry gets wiped out, it'll take a minimum of 3 generations or 9 years to start to rebuild. So at the same time that the oyster industry in Prince Edward Island was reaching out to me, say, Cliff, come to PEI and talk to us. Come see us. We have to explain, you have to see this. So I went to PEI in August to meet with the stakeholders in the oyster industry and to hear their pleas. So all these pleas were being made to save basically a $100 million industry. The minister offered $500,000. At the same time, Atlantic Ocean Healthy Oceans Initiative, or the Ahoy Group, an outfit that has 3 board members, one of which works for 2 Liberal senators, has 5 employees. They receive $1.8 million. And in grants, and when I questioned the minister yesterday in the Fisheries Committee, Madam Speaker, she had no idea who they were. No idea. And neither did her deputies. No one knew who they were. But everyone knows who the oyster industry in Prince Edward Island is, and how much it means to the economy and the cultural fabric and even the tourism industry of Prince Edward Island. Everyone's heard of the Melpak oyster, which in 1905 was named the #1 oyster in the world in a Paris competition, Madam Speaker. This is very serious. $500,000 for $100 million, $500,000 for $100 million industry, including spin-offs, $1.8 million for an ENGO that has 5 employees. It just doesn't make sense. Where are the priorities? You know, it's no surprise that Canadians are disgusted with the priorities of this government, Madam Speaker. And it's no surprise that 24 backbenchers signed their name to have this Prime Minister take a walk. Canadians have suffered long enough. They've suffered through record cost of living rise, record food bank usage. Most of this is driven by carbon tax, which if this Liberal NDP government stays in power long enough, if common sense Conservatives don't come to the rescue, Canadians are going to be paying 61 cents a litre for gasoline, for diesel, for any kind of energy that's petroleum based, that moves goods around the country. Crime is out of control, both metro and rural. This country's broken, Madam Speaker. In my riding, I stood in this House not long ago and I spoke about rural crime, which the media downplayed and said I was exaggerating. The RCMP also said that I was exaggerating, and they weren't aware of such a crime issue as I laid out here in this place, Madam Speaker. But people are living in fear. When our senior citizens have to sleep with a baseball bat or a gun next to their bed, heaven forbid, people who built this country, they paid taxes, they worked hard, they raised families, only to have to retire in fear, not to be able to sleep at night, afraid they're going to be broken into and robbed by someone who needs to feed a crack or a meth addiction, Madam Speaker? It's gone too far. It's gone too far. Canadians want an election. This country needs to heal. It needs to mend. It needs to go back to where it was before everything was broken, Madam Speaker. But you know what? We're not going to deal with any of those things while we have to stand here day after day and debate this privilege motion, because this Prime Minister is using it to deflect while he's trying to get his infighting under control. And as long as we're debating this motion, then we're not finding new ways in which the country's been broken. And as well, we're not putting forward confidence motions, which are the people that sent us here dearly want. It's time to give the people what they want, Madam Speaker, They want an election. It's time for this debate to be over here. It's time for this Prime Minister to produce the papers that he was told to produce. Thank you very much.